us today. Joanna, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I'd love to talk with you about your journey with HCU, especially given that this is HCU Awareness Day. So maybe we can just start from the beginning. And, Joanna, tell me your name and your age and where you're from.
So my name is Joanna Ball. I'm originally from California. Grew up in a little tiny city called Martinez. It's maybe about one street long. They have an upper Martinez and a lower Martinez, so there's actually two streets. The upper Martinez where I was all Morello, and downtown Martinez is all Alhambra Valley, and there's a bunch of side streets that go off of it, but it winds all over the place. Both of them do. The Alhambra Valley is more of a straight road. But Martinez neighbors Pleasant Hill and Crockett. And Crockett has been in some movies. But right now, and since 91, I have been living in Oregon. Currently, I'm in Beaverton, which is a suburb of Portland.
Great. And how old are you?
I am 51.
Thank you. So when were you diagnosed with HCU? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was diagnosed at age 3, so about 1974. And I rubbed trisodium phosphate into my eyes, otherwise known as paint thinner, out in my dad's shed, and kids don't wash their hands, and so you end up with all kinds of stuff. And I was lucky enough to see a substitute ophthalmologist who knew about it. And at the time, there were only 5 people in the United States who had it. And so we didn't really know a whole lot. Still to this day, there's people who aren't diagnosed until after they've had a stroke. Some people, there's at least one person I know of who wasn't diagnosed till she was 60, and she diagnosed herself. So
you're diagnosed as a child, and you were so gracious to share so much of your story with us, and we will share it with the rest of our team. And I know that stroke was part of your story too, right?
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So I've actually had multiple strokes. The first one happened when about age 30. And I was at school at the time, going to Portland Community College. And there's several branches of Portland Community College. But the one that I went to was the one that's nearest to Lake Oswego. I ended up in a seizure, and at the time I still wasn't believing, and that's so rare. I've never met anybody with it. Nobody took the time to look it up. And so it was kind of, well, if you don't want to take the time to look it up, why should I believe you? And nobody in my family also has any symptoms, and everybody else in my family are meat eaters and dairy and everything I can't have. I also grew up in that world. Nobody in my family was, nobody I knew of was even vegan or vegetarian. So it totally different lifestyle. And our diet is a lot harder than even the vegan diet. So but the first seizure, I ended up going to, I passed out outside the disabilities office, And when I woke up, I was actually in the disabilities office. I had fainted and ended up in a grand mal seizure. And they wheeled me into an ambulance, and I wasn't thinking nobody in my family ever has this condition. I was thinking nobody in my family's ever had a seizure, and totally fighting them all away. They said my seizure, they said, you're going to miss class today. And I said, nobody in my family's ever had a seizure. And I ended up having another one inside the hospital. At that time, it was minor. The stroke happened, it was all of 3 days. They were talking about canceling class while I was in the hospital. And just dropping all my classes and just stopping for the rest of the year. And I ended up going back to school 3 days later. And the second stroke happened maybe 5 years later. I was 35 then. And with that one, I had come off a job that was really stressful, going on to another job that was really stressful. The first job was a job with a hearing aid company. And with that company, the person was a scam artist, and I was trying to turn him in for the entire year. And he didn't get caught until about 2010. And when he started selling hearing aids in his own state. He lived in Port Arthur, Washington, was selling his office was in Hillsborough. And that I wanted to leave after about the third day, but family was stick with a job until you find something else. It's hard to find a job while you're working another job. Then I ended up by my own accord getting fired from that job because I told him that I was trying to turn him in. And really, I wanted out before that anyway. So I ended up moving on to a call center where I was working with, with Sprint Nextel. It was just Nextel at the time. About 3 months into it, it ended up merging with Sprint, and everybody was worried about the Sprint. People were worried about Nextel, and Nextel was worried about Sprint. It's like, your phone is going to spontaneously combust because we're merging. And so we just about 6 months into that job, right as I was going to get benefits, and was when I had my stroke, and was when I had the major stroke. I woke up paralyzed on my left side. So everything is back now. I spent about a month in the hospital. They never thought I'd walk again. And never thought I'd work again. Both of which I prove on. I wish I had bet them. But they ended up sending me through 2 weeks of a rehab at a very good hospital here, Good Sam. It's a legacy hospital. And they took the legs off the wheelchair, so I learned to walk. So I learned to use it with my legs instead of my hands. With eating, I had pipe fitter. They fit over silverware, so it made it kind of like children's silverware. With actors picking up beads and paper clips and small objects. Speech therapy was probably the one I spent the most time with. Speech therapy does a lot more than just speech. They practiced with resumes. They did math skills with me, all kinds of stuff. The last day of that rehab, we went out to dinner, and I was not told that I would have a job duty. Everybody who went on that outing, which was right across the street from the hospital, was not told that they would have a duty until right at the time we were going to go, which was a smart idea. Nobody would have gone. And my two jobs were directing everybody back to the hospital because my directional skills were nowhere, and figuring out the tip. Math skills still are no good. Never were. And so we were walking over there, and the person who was walking with us said, "You better pay attention because you're going to be directing everybody back to the hospital." And so there were about 20 of us, and all with varying different things that they had going on. And I can remember maybe two of them could walk. And so they had me walking inside the hospital. They sent me home with a walker and a wheelchair, both of which I refused to use. And I had my parents walk me around on a gait belt till I learned how to walk, which my father was very helpful with. He unfortunately ended up passing away towards the end of 2005 from a knee surgery. They didn't put him on blood thinners. And so
Joanna, I know that you have been through so much with HCU and your story. You've been so gracious to share so much with us, and thank you. I have to ask, and maybe you could share some of your thoughts, what would an effective treatment for HCU mean for you?
Everything. Possibly being able to go back to my diet, could be to where it was beforehand, without having to worry about, is this going to cause possible death for me? A stroke, seizure, maybe coming off medications that I don't need anymore. Who knows what it could do? But we need to get to that point before it happens. I mean, before I can figure that out, or anybody else can. But that's not just me, it's everybody else too. And whereas there are several different treatments on the horizon, there's maybe one, and they're just testing it in rats now that might be a cure. And so
Thank you.
That's gene therapy.
So you are a wonderful advocate for yourself. You do a great job representing the whole HCU community, and I know that's important to you.
Yeah.
So what do you want the team at Synlogic to know about HCU and to know about you?
Well, for one, it's not going anywhere. This is a lifelong condition. Had it since birth, didn't know about it until I was 3. But it's doesn't present always for a while. people mistake it for Marfan syndrome because it looks outwardly like Marfan syndrome, even though we follow the PKU diet. And which is a little bit harder than vegan, but it's a combination vegan, gluten-free. We use more starches than flours. We can't have the beans, tofu, the high protein stuff that most people can have. Even some fruits and vegetables are off the market. And this is stuff that has to be tracked also. And so we're not only looking at protein, but we're also looking at calories, because calories, HCU is known for both tall and thin. So you have to worry about how many calories are you getting to. And so because not enough calories, you're too thin. Before the formula, which is another thing. Before that, I was 50 pounds lighter. And with the formula right now, it's the first formula I've ever had that I not only like the flavor of it, but I can mix it with acidane, which is one of my other medications. And formula is what I refer to as an amino acid drink, because I've learned that over the years, because if you say protein powder, people think something off the grocery store shelves. If you think of formula, people think baby formula, which we're going through a huge problem with formula right now because of it being mistaked as a baby formula. And so we're fighting the FDA to try and get formula now for a lot of people.
Okay, thank you. I do have one last question for you, especially since this is our time with you is connected to HCU Awareness Day. Do you have any other messages for the team at Synlogic, for the researchers at Synlogic who are looking at HCU?
Thank you for even looking into it. There's a lot of people who, there's a lot of companies who only look at the more common things. Most common in the metabolic world is PKU. And it's the one metabolic condition that is not life-threatening. In that respect, thank you for even looking at it. But I don't know a whole lot about your company, and so I ended up responding because of a link I found in the HCU Herald, so the newsletter that is sent out by HCU Network America. And so I don't know a whole lot about Synlogic.
Well, I'm glad we're connected. And you do plan to attend the HCU Network America meeting in Bethesda in June, right?
Yes.
So it would be our pleasure to spend some more time with you, and would be happy to tell you more about Synlogic and to learn even more about your own journey. So okay. Joanna, thank you so much for your time today. And I hope that we can keep in touch.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Melanie, how was that?